There are murders you solve, and murders that solve you. 25 years ago, I buried a single piece of evidence. I told myself it was for the greater good. I told myself the city needed peace more than the truth. I lead. Last Tuesday, someone left a package on my front porch. Inside was the exact evidence bag I buried in 1999. The tag still carried my signature. Across the front, someone had written 6 words in fresh red ink. You buried the truth, detective. 24 hours later, a man was found hanging beneath Portland's Burnside Bridge. Around his neck hung another evidence bag. Same case number, same handwriting. That's when I realized something that made my blood run cold. Someone knew exactly what I had done, and they weren't coming for justice. They were coming for me. My name is Thomas Hale. For 34 years, I wore a homicide badge in Portland. People called me one of the best detectives in Oregon. They were wrong. The best detectives don't spend the rest of their lives hiding one mistake. Mine had a case number. 417. October 3rd. A 17-year-old college student named Emily Carter disappeared after leaving her evening class. 3 days later, her body was found inside an abandoned paper mill. No robbery, no assault, just one gunshot. Execution style. The city panicked. Television stations covered the story every hour. The mayor demanded an arrest. The police commissioner demanded results, and I was a 28-year-old rookie detective leading the biggest investigation of my career. For 12 days, we found nothing. No fingerprints, no weapon, no witnesses. Then, an anonymous tip arrived. A local mechanic named David Nolan. He had argued with Emily 2 weeks before her disappearance. Someone claimed they saw his truck near the paper mill. It wasn't much, but under political pressure, it became enough. We searched his garage, found a handgun. The caliber matched. The newspapers celebrated. Portland murder solved. The city applauded. David Nolan cried through every interview. I didn't kill her. No one listened. Not even me. 2 nights before trial, everything changed. A patrol officer found a backpack floating in the Willamette River. Inside, Emily's missing camera, her diary, and a blood-covered leather glove. Not David Nolan's, someone else's. Inside the glove, DNA, hair fibers, fresh fingerprints. It destroyed our entire case. If those results reached court, David Nolan would walk free. The real killer would disappear forever. I carried the evidence bag into my office, sat alone for nearly an hour. Then, Police Commissioner Richard Lawson entered. He quietly closed the door. No one else knows? I slowly shook my head. He looked at the evidence, then looked back at me. If this gets out, we become the department that arrested an innocent man. The mayor loses his election. The city loses trust. So what do we do? He answered, with 5 words I'll never forget. Sometimes truth costs too much. That night, we drove into the Columbia River Gorge. No cameras, no records, no paperwork, only me, the commissioner, and 1 shovel. He handed me the evidence bag. Do it. My hands wouldn't move. Thomas, this never happened. I stared at Emily's blood still visible through the plastic. Then I dug. 3 feet, 4 feet, 5. The commissioner placed the evidence inside. I covered it with dirt. When it was over, he placed 1 hand on my shoulder. You just saved this department. No, I had just destroyed it. A week later, David Nolan was convicted. Life without parole. His mother screamed inside the courtroom. His father collapsed. David looked directly at me before deputies led him away. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He simply asked 1 question. Detective, when you finally learn the truth, will you remember my name? I never answered, because I couldn't. Time buried everything. Or so I believed. I became a decorated detective. Won medals. Solved dozens of murders. Eventually, I retired. Commissioner Lawson died of a heart attack. Everyone connected to case 417 disappeared. Except me. Every October, I drove to the same forest, stood over the place where we buried the evidence, then drove home. I told myself I was making sure no one found it. The truth? I was making sure it was still there. 25 years later, Tuesday morning, 7 RM. My doorbell rang. No one stood outside. Only a cardboard box. Inside, an old police evidence bag. My breathing stopped. Case number 417. My own signature. Date the 15th of October 1999. Exactly as I had written it. There was dirt still stuck to the plastic. Fresh dirt. Someone had dug it up. My hands began shaking. Inside the bag wasn't the glove, wasn't the diary. Only one cassette tape. I placed it into an old recorder. Static. Then, a voice. Not Emily's. Not David's. Mine. My own voice from 25 years ago. Evidence received. DNA sample secured. Then, another voice interrupted the recording. A voice that had never been there before. Slow. Calm. Cold. I found what you buried. Now, I'm going to bury you. The tape ended. At that exact second, my phone rang. Portland Police Homicide. A young detective spoke quickly. Mr. Hale, we've got another body. I asked where. There was a long silence. Then he answered, at the old paper mill. The victim was carrying your business card, and someone wrote your name on the wall. I grabbed my coat. For the first time in 25 years, case 417 was no longer buried. The abandoned paper mill hadn't changed. The rusted machines still stood where they had 25 years earlier. The smell of wet concrete, old oil, and death returned the moment I stepped inside. Yellow police tape surrounded the building. Young detectives looked at me with curiosity. To them, I was a retired legend. To myself, I was the reason they were standing there. A detective approached. You knew this place. I nodded. I worked a case here. He pulled back a white sheet. The victim was a middle-aged man. Clean suit. Hands tied behind his back. One gunshot. Exactly like Emily Carter. Then I noticed something hanging around his neck. An old evidence tag. Case 417. Written underneath. One lie created many victims. Back at headquarters, I asked for the victim's name. The room fell silent. Detective Ryan Foster handed me the file. I almost dropped it. The victim was Mark Nolan, David Nolan's younger brother. For 25 years, Mark had spent every dollar trying to prove David was innocent. He had hired lawyers, private investigators, former detectives. No one listened. 3 days before his death, Mark filed a request to reopen case 417. Someone killed him before the hearing. Then Detective Foster looked at me. We searched his apartment. He had thousands of pages about your investigation. He believed someone inside the department buried evidence. I didn't answer, because he was right. I drove directly to Oregon State Penitentiary. David Nolan was still alive. 25 years older, gray hair, wrinkled hands, but the same calm eyes. He smiled when he saw me. I wondered how long it would take. You knew I'd come? I knew the truth always comes back. I sat across from him. For the first time, I couldn't call him a murderer. Instead, I whispered, I'm sorry. He looked at me for a long moment, then reached beneath his prison mattress, pulled out a sealed envelope. My brother wanted you to have this, if anything happened to him. Inside was a newspaper clipping and one photograph. The photograph showed Commissioner Richard Lawson standing beside another man, a wealthy businessman. I immediately recognized him. Victor Ashcroft, owner of Ashcroft Industries, one of Oregon's most powerful developers. Written behind the picture, 5 words. Emily found what he built. That night, I reopened every forgotten file. Emily Carter hadn't been investigating random corruption. She was writing a university thesis. About toxic chemical dumping, Ashcroft Industries had secretly buried hazardous waste beneath a new housing development. If the truth became public, thousands of families would sue. Billions of dollars would disappear. Emily discovered the documents. My father, a detective, never knew any of that. Neither did I. Someone higher than the commissioner had controlled everything. Victor Ashcroft. The commissioner buried the evidence. Ashcroft buried the truth. David Nolan buried his life inside prison. Emily was buried in a cemetery. And I buried my conscience. The cassette tape suddenly made sense. I played it again, this time, listening carefully, very quietly. Behind the voices was another sound, a church bell. Exactly 7 chimes. There was only one church near the old dumping site, St. Michael's. I drove there before sunrise. Behind the abandoned chapel, fresh soil. Someone had already dug another grave. Inside, a metal case, not buried 25 years ago, buried 3 nights earlier. I opened it. Inside, Emily's original diary, the missing glove, DNA reports, photographs, and a final video recording. Emily herself appeared on the screen. If you're watching this, I'm probably dead. My professor told me to trust Detective Thomas Hale. Tears filled my eyes. She trusted me. She never knew I would become the man who buried her evidence. Emily continued, Victor Ashcroft ordered my murder. If this recording survives, don't let another innocent person pay for what he did. Before I could leave, someone applauded behind me. Victor Ashcroft. Older, but unmistakable. He smiled. I always knew you'd find it. He wasn't alone. 2 armed men stood beside him. I buried your evidence once. He laughed. You buried it for me. He slowly walked closer. I never even threatened you. You chose your career. You chose the lie. You've punished yourself for 25 years. I barely had to do anything. Those words hurt more than any bullet, because they were true. Then, police sirens. Dozens of them. Detective Ryan Foster stepped into the clearing. Behind him, FBI agents, state police, federal prosecutors. I had secretly transmitted Emily's recording the moment I found it. Ashcroft looked around. For the first time, his confidence disappeared. Agents surrounded him, on by on. His bodyguards lowered their weapons. As federal agents placed handcuffs on Victor Ashcroft, he looked directly at me. You think this fixes anything? I slowly shook my head. No, it doesn't bring Emily back. It doesn't give David 25 years of his life. It doesn't erase what I did. He smiled. So why confess? I looked toward Detective Foster, then answered, because the truth deserves at least one person willing to destroy himself for it. 3 months later, David Nolan walked out of prison, a free man. After 25 years, the state of Oregon officially overturned his conviction. Commissioner Lawson's role became public. Victor Ashcroft was sentenced to multiple life terms. As for me, I stood inside a courtroom one final time. Not as a detective, as a défendant. I confessed to destroying evidence, obstructing justice, helping convict an innocent man. The judge looked at my decades of service. Then at my confession, I lost my pension, my badge, my reputation, everything I had built, and I accepted every consequence. Because 25 years earlier, I buried the truth to save my career. This time, I buried my career to save the truth. Outside the courthouse, a young reporter asked me one question. Do you regret confessing? I looked toward the gray Portland sky, then answered, the day I buried the evidence. I stopped being a detective. Today, I finally became one.